everyone. Thank you for joining us today on ThriveCAST. I am here with Malory Atkinson, and she's the co-founder of Shear Structural, which is a woman-based structural engineering firm that's all about thoughtful design and collaboration. So Mallory is here today to bring a really fresh perspective to the industry, kind of blending that technical expertise with a people-first approach to engineering. So Mallory, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here today.
So tell me a little bit about Shear Structural. What are you guys all about?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we are a 100% women-owned company. We are Georgia's first and only all women-owned structural engineering company.
I love that.
I co-founded the firm back in 2017 alongside my two business partners who are actually licensed structural engineers. I'm not an engineer by trade, so I handle the business aspect. They handle the engineering side. And we're located just outside of Atlanta in a small place called Chamblee, Georgia. And our focus is commercial structural engineering. We focus on adaptive reuse projects, healthcare projects, municipal projects, and education projects. So we like to pursue building designs that positively impact the community. So that's kind of where that project focus comes into, building places and spaces that really truly make a difference in a community, like a new park or a new school or a new hospital, fire station, or even from the sustainability side, taking a building that might be blighted in a community, it's been vacant, it was an old warehouse, and converting it to a community center. So those are the projects that we focus on.
So are the vast majority of your projects public projects? So do you have to go out to competitive bid for those, or do you have a mix of public versus private?
We are about 50% public and 50% private. The three of us lived through the Great Recession. And so making sure we had a diverse group of clients to service is a big part of when we started Shear.
Yeah, that makes sense. In our prior conversation, you mentioned that even though you're a woman business enterprise, a WBE, which is really important in this industry and actually elevates your brand, so to speak, but you guys don't really lean into that status as like a sales strategy. So can you talk about why and how your firm wins work based just on merit?
Sure. I mean, just like anything in this industry, it all comes down to the relationships. And something unique about our company is that the three founders are almost all different generationally, like baby boomers, Gen X, and millennial. And so all three of us came to the business with a different network of people and different clients. And so that was really cool when we started to kind of see the similarities and, of course, the ways that we could diversify our client base. But yeah, as I mentioned to you previously, we don't really lean into that. WBE just happened to be that we're all women. We saw an opportunity for the three of us to come together because we liked the work that we were doing and we liked how we worked together. And we just happened to be women. And again, we didn't want to rely on the public sector work and didn't want, I think sometimes there can be negative connotations when you have firms that that's kind of all the work that they do.
Yeah.
It has lent us, I think, some interesting opportunities more to team with our competitors. So a few of the larger engineering firms that are in Atlanta, we've had the opportunity, they've asked us to take a piece of a building or a piece of a project because they're looking for a certain percent. But that is a very limited amount of our business and not something that we heavily market when we're trying to win work. I would say we lean into that from a marketing aspect when we recruit talent. Because having women in all our leadership roles are women, that lends to a different workplace culture. Mm-hmm. We are highly flexible. We're all mothers. We're all working mothers. We understand the need for flexibility for anything. I know we've rescheduled this podcast because my daughter was sick. So, that is definitely something on the recruiting aspect that we've heavily leaned into. I don't think it necessarily matters that the owners are women, but in terms of our leadership being women, that has been a really big piece of how we're recruiting the next generation of talent.
I think that's a huge differentiator actually in this industry. And I mean, given the fact that you offer that type of flexibility in the AEC space, I have learned that the vast majority of work being done is required to be done in office. there's very few firms that offer the ability to work remotely, which I find really fascinating, but it's a little bit old school in adopting what that remote workplace looks like. But has that really helped you attract new talent because of some of that flexibility that you offer? And have you seen an equal ratio between men and women, or are there more women dominant because of that flexibility? Because I bet you are one of a few in the industry that's doing that. Not many are.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, of course, we had remote working basically from day one, we were a startup company in 2017 and working out of my business partner's basement. And so, we had to be very flexible to accommodate that. And so I had come from the tech world. And so I built everything to be able to work remotely on a cloud. So when COVID hit, we very quickly were able to pivot like the very next day, or I think it was a Friday that everything got shut down. So on Monday, we all worked remotely. And then, I think again, for me, it's less about like the opportunity to work remotely. And it really is being truly flexible and understanding that things come up, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily matter that people, I don't think everybody works super well working from home 100% of the time. I mean, what we
Yeah.
do in our industry is highly collaborative. And so it is helpful to be in the office and to have those conversations. And for us, our office is all open. Nobody has an office. None of the partners have offices. Nobody has an office. We all sit at desks. We don't even have like barriers between them. And it's helpful, especially for the next generation of engineers, to kind of
Yeah.
hear the conversations that we're having with a contractor when there is obviously a field issue, especially, when we're doing these adaptive reuse projects and we don't have existing drawings. And so they're out on site tearing down a wall or making a hole in a wall to see what's going on in there. It's helpful for everybody to hear what's going on and also to feel also how your coworkers are doing. So I think it's helpful to be in the office again.
Yeah.
So it's like you can have the opportunity to work collaboratively with one another, but also understand that people have lives, and those lives sometimes have conflicting priorities. And sometimes they need to leave early to pick a kid up from school, or sometimes the only time a doctor can make that appointment is at 11 a.m. And so they work from home because it's close to their house. And it's like, again, I think just as long as people are getting their work done and you're available to your team as you need to be, like, it doesn't really matter where you're doing that. We have a handful of employees that are fully remote,
Yeah.
great engineers that worked at our company that for various reasons had to move out of the state or out of the country. And so they're working for us fully remote, which is great that we're able to do that. And then we have some people that have hybrid schedules. Again, it's just kind of about flexibility tailored to that individual employee.
And I think that's the important keyword is flexibility, and being able to understand that, people have lives outside of work, and flexibility is really important, especially in this day and age post COVID. It has always been a really hot topic. I give you guys props for that. So that's really amazing. And I bet you, working in that open office environment, I bet you it helps people like train and learn and, understand how you speak to a client and the type of client
Correct.
you're speaking to. Maybe you're
Yeah.
speaking to a mayor, or maybe you're speaking to a construction project manager, and the way you speak to them are very different. So I bet in that
Yes.
open environment, it really gives some of the younger workforce that opportunity to really learn how to manage that, which is amazing. I love
Yeah.
that.
And again, our industry is extremely collaborative. I always
Totally.
tell students when I'm like speaking at Georgia Tech or, at another college, I'm like, if you don't like working on group projects, like this is not the industry for you, because everything is one very large group project that, you have to rely on others. So not only like your internal team, but also your external team.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, being able to kind of hear those conversations or, see what's going on, or how, my business partner is talking to one client versus a owner versus a engineer is very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So you also mentioned in our like pre-meeting that Shear Structural, you guys don't really chase projects, but rather you are building those long-term client relationships. So and we know that this is a relationship industry. So can you expand on how that strategy has really contributed to your long-term success, especially with like repeat clients?
Well, yeah, I mean, over 90% of our work is repeat clients. And I think, this industry is all about relationships, and the way you build a relationship is by earning someone's trust. And so when you have a client who says like, hey, maybe it's a brand new client. You haven't worked with them before. We were referred to them and they're like, hey, I really want to work with you. I've heard wonderful things about you, but all I have is this small project. And if we were like, you know what, that small project, it fits, maybe it's like a small renovation of like the inside of a hospital operating room, right? Very small project, hanging a piece of equipment. Couple hours for us, not a big deal. And we're like, you know what, that's too small. If we said something like that's too small for us, that's not a great way to start off that relationship. That tells that client that I'm only interested in working for you for these massive, large hospital projects. And that's not the way the world works. They don't always have large scale hospital projects. They oftentimes have renovation work of operating rooms. And so, we really try to focus on, is that the best client? Is that a relationship that we want to start working on? So we're chasing that relationship for that client, not chasing the project. And so that has really afforded us, of course, wonderful relationships with clients that value the work that we do. And so they're willing, maybe to pay, I'm not going to say we're the most expensive people, but they're willing to pay our fees. We're not arguing over fees because they understand we have a trusted relationship and they understand that we're worth it. We're not trying to nickel and dime each other. Or if there's something challenging going on with the project or the project schedule is, the things that we're dealing with right now, they're more willing to work with us because they want to work with us. So my business partner always says, we do their doghouse and their penthouse, right? Like we're making sure that we are covering that client. So when they think of a structural engineer that they love to work with, they think about us. Doesn't matter the size of the project, but they're like, we love working with Shear. That's even on our website, like the structural engineer you want to love working with. So like that's us.
Do you guys just do work in the state of Georgia? Are you nationwide, or where's your primary market space?
We're focused on the Southeast, I think 11 states, so kind of to Texas to Florida up to Virginia, kind of that swath. The majority of our work is in Georgia. We're roughly 25 engineers, so that pretty much fills our cup, is the work throughout the state of Georgia and in Metro Atlanta. But we have projects right now in North and South Carolina, in Texas, in Virginia, and in Florida. Just the majority of our projects are in the state of Georgia.
Oh, okay. So when the three of you got together and you decided to co-found Shear Structural, what was the biggest challenge in the early days, do you think, in getting the firm up and running?
I think the biggest challenge, in our industry, reputation, right? We talk about relationships, reputation is really important. And so when you're saying a new name that people have never heard of, they're like, I don't know, like, what's your reputation? Like there are not many new structural engineering companies. Like most of the structural engineering companies that we're competing against have been around for decades.
Yeah.
And so I think that the challenge for us was we were like a startup structural engineering firm competing with established firms that are maybe even, that are obviously quite larger than us. And so, the first thing we did was, before day one, get everything set up. Got a website, got letterhead, got business cards, got every possible social media, everything possible, all of our proposal templates, everything was ready to go. So when we flipped the light switch on August 1st of 2017, we could go. We didn't start on that day. Like we were working at night and getting everything ready to go. So like we could just hit the ground running. And that first day, I think by the end of the first week, we had sent out 3 proposals. And by the end of the first month, we had 11 projects. So we wanted it to feel so smooth. So our trusted relationships that we had as individuals, they were like, oh, it's just Shear now, right? Like it's just, we know Karen, Holly, and Malory, and now it's just Shear. And when I tell people that we're approaching our 8-year anniversary, they're like, only 8 years? Like, man, it feels like it's been a lot longer. And I was like, yeah, that was on purpose. We wanted it to feel, again, very, very high end, very trusted, not like, hey, can you give me a proposal? It's like, oh, I don't even have a template set up. Like, let me think about the legalese of what that's going to look like. We were like, oh, of course, we already have our insurance. We had everything ready to go on day one, so we could just hit the ground running.
I love that. And I don't want to sound cliche, but women are very organized. A lot of women are very organized. And to have that process in place makes it very easy just to kind of press that go button, knowing that all the little things that are sometimes hanging that will hold you back or slow you down are all taken care of. So that's incredibly
Yeah,
smart.
I wanted to
Incredibly
look
smart.
like a real firm from day one, right? I didn't want to
Yeah.
feel like we were just trying to do this thing. I didn't want to feel scrappy. We were scrappy, right? We're working out of a basement on borrowed laptops. Like, we're being scrappy, but I didn't want to look scrappy. I
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah.
feel like the firms that we were competing against.
So how did you win projects against those bigger guys? Because sometimes, that reputation is all that you need. So how did you score those first projects, competing with all of those bigger competitors in the industry? What do you think set you guys apart?
I mean, again, our trusted relationships that we had, being in the industry, specifically also being in structural engineering in Atlanta for so long before starting Shear, was definitely the first thing. And the second thing was just being really flexible and adaptable. That is the benefit of a startup, right? You
Yeah.
can be scrappy. We don't have the bureaucracy and the red tape of a big company. I didn't have to ask like 4 people if we can pursue this project or if we can give this fee. It was like we could be quick and flexible on that side, right? In order to be able, and very obviously personal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, you're working with the 3 owners, but look, we
Yeah.
looked very professional and we're all ready to go. And again, we hired our first person about 6 weeks later. The next person, like 2 weeks after that. I mean, we had everything planned out and ready to go. So it just felt so super seamless. So they were like, we love working with you. Now we just get to work with you in this capacity, and I get even more attention. I get even more personal service. I have even less red tape to go through. That's amazing.
Love that. So, are there any marketing or branding strategies that really help communicate Shear's resilience and kind of long-term value to clients that really kind of makes you stand out from the competition?
I do think because our approach to our work has been more, how to say this in a proper way, like fun. I mean, the work that we do, I do think people in our industry like kind of forget that we're designing and building the places and spaces that people interact with every day. Like, that is a very tall order and very impactful. We impact people's everyday lives, the roads they drive on, the sidewalks, the schools they learn in, the faith-based places they worship in, where they work. I mean, we've all been in horribly designed places and we've all
Yeah.
been in lovely designed places. And so, I think that we started to tailor our marketing message to be about that. When I had left the industry in 2015 and I had went to go work in the tech startup world, and I just found this like ball of energy in any discussion that was talked about with tech startups, right? It was just like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, people are so excited about tech startups. Like, it just sounded exciting. And
Yeah.
there was all this money and energy and excitement, and I was like, but all we're doing is like building a mobile app. Like, that's like, we're not changing the world. And I'm like looking back at the company that I came from, and I'm like, they're like actually like designing the world. Like, they're actually changing the world. And I just think that we just get so ingrained in it in the AEC industry that we're just like, oh yeah, this is like what we do. And I'm like, we literally like designed this whole place.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to bring some of that high energy to this space. And so structural engineering is really freaking cool.
Yeah.
And like, why no structural engineers like talk about how cool it is, the work that we do. And so I remember like in 2017, I'm like looking at Instagram and I'm like, who's on Instagram? I'm like, none of my competitors are on Instagram. I was like, awesome, great. But bar is low. But I just have to be there, right? My first thing is like, I just have to be there. And architects do a pretty good job
They
at
do.
sharing and talking about that. So I'm generalizing, but I'm more generalizing against engineers. Architects can do a very good job. Sometimes it's only too much about the building and not enough about the people, but that's maybe a sidebar conversation. So I was like, okay, how are these architects that are emulating these really exciting projects, how are they talking about what they do? And so basically I started modeling that kind of work. And then it's like, okay, let's bring in the human element. So from the very beginning, we started talking, because again, it's a structural engineer's license. It's a structural engineer's license. Like, we're all licensed to practice the same work.
Yeah.
So again, like that field becomes very like non-competitive. It's like they can do it, we can do it. So the thing that's different is our people. So we again started having the conversation more around how our projects and how our work was impacting the community positively, leaning into the people aspects of our team, because again, that's the only thing unique to what we do is the people. And then also talking about our diversity, because again, as the only women-owned structural engineering firm and relying on wanting to build a very diverse team that could bring in those different backgrounds and perspectives. And one of my business partners is a licensed engineer and an architect. So again, she comes from that place of using both sides of her brain. So kind of bringing that conversation of diversity into how we marketed the firm, all those things were kind of how we got kicked off and started. And I think it just was really exciting, and people kind of, grabbed onto it, and we just looked fun. And I mean, we have more than once had a client or a prospective client email us and say, you look fun, or you look nice, or you look happy. And I'm like, do these other people not? So again, I just think sometimes it's just like adding our personality. Maybe that's what it was. We're just really adding some personality into the work that we do.
And I think that's really important. I love how you said, the AEC industry is really kind of shaping our communities, because I couldn't agree with that more. I feel like AEC is almost like the nucleus of any community, and what we build, what we design, what we foster to be able to bring that community to life is really how the community gets started. And so I think that the work that we do is so impactful in that way, because, we really are shaping everybody's lives in a really impactful way. And not everybody can say that when they're developing, an app.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, maybe a little, but,
little. Yes.
not to the extent with which you guys are doing your work. And that's what makes me love this industry so much, is because we're changing people's lives. And even though we're on the back burner and we're not, talking about it all the time, it's just, we're doing good work. And that's what I love about it. It's just very fulfilling.
Yes, I agree.
So how did you develop your business strategy, and how do you do that today to compete with those larger, more established firms? Because a lot of some of these public, RFPs are based on price. Like, if you can come in at the lowest price, you're probably going to win it. But how do you get past that? And really kind of sell what your value prop is in some of these proposals.
Well, I will say that we are not often competing. We are rarely competing only on price. So even in a public setting, for two reasons. One, I don't know if this is unique to the state of Georgia, but oftentimes they have like a two-step qualifications pursuit, where the first step is qualifications and the second step is like an interview and price. So, you're kind of pre-qualifying everybody. So they shortlist maybe the top 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they're having a conversation around price. So you're kind of weeding out just a straight hard bid. And so we pretty much never do that. So I would say we would rarely compete on price. And also, again, we're working primarily with an architect, and we're going to be like 10, on average, 10% of an architect's fee. So we're not usually the problem. So, but again, but I do think, when we are having conversations around price, that we are a smaller firm than these big companies. We can be more nimble. We can look at things a little bit differently. We don't have the same overhead costs that a larger firm. So being a small business and being a small firm, we're automatically going to have, we're automatically going to be a better value, in my opinion. We're not going to be as inexpensive as Joe Schmo out of his house, but Joe Schmo out of his house probably is managing way too much work and is not responding to calls because it's just him. And so often we get calls from people who are like, oh, I was working with my structural engineer, but, he's retiring, or now, he's got too much work, or he's stopped returning my calls, or we're halfway through the project. So we're really just not seeing the price conversation happen as often. We shall see if there's a recession that might be different, but I do think that we do think as a company often about, future proofing. Obviously you could never fully future proof, but, kind of making sure that we're covering our bases so, we can withstand a recession how we feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah, that makes sense. You also mentioned the use of the word resilience over sustainability. Can you talk about what resilience means in structural engineering and in business to be able to kind of weather some of these hard hit times like a potential recession?
Yeah. So oftentimes when people are like, oh, we want a sustainable company, and when they're not talking about the green aspect of sustainability, when I think about sustainability, I think of sustaining, which is kind of maintaining, which is keeping everything sort of the status quo. And when I talk about, the financial planning of the company, and we think about like profitability, when I talk to firm owners and they are budgeting for profitability of like 5 and 10%, to me, I mean, we all know the inflation numbers. 5 to 10% is sustaining. That is not, if you have a profitability budget of 10% or less, I mean, you're just sustaining your company. You can't grow your company. And so then I think about, you start to, add up a tier. So let's say now you're budgeting for 15% profitability. Okay, that means you can make investments. You can kind of make select investments. You can invest in maybe people, you can have to choose, or technology, or a service line. You kind of can make a decision, which is better. And then when I think about resiliency, and again, probably a product of living through the Great Recession in 2008, is I want to make sure that we are covered to weather a storm, that I should say we're covered enough to be able to have the time to make a tough decision.
Yeah.
We don't have to make a rash decision. Those decisions are going to be tough regardless.
Right.
But if we have to make a big decision, I want to have enough leeway time to have as much information as I possibly can. And so that means budgeting for profitability of 20 or more percent, because that just affords us the time that we need to be able to handle those things, or to be able to make an investment in people and processes. And so that's how I think about resiliency, is just making sure that we have that buffer in there, and that we're having those conversations internally, and we're thinking about that all the time.
So how do you build resiliency into like your firm's culture, and what does that look like from a cultural perspective? Because I bet the culture of your firm is amazing. I would love just to come into your office and sit down and have coffee and a conversation with those that you work with. So
anytime. You're welcome anytime, Fran.
And I mean, how do you build that resiliency in the people that you're employing to make sure that they're they're living this too?
I mean, really, it's transparency. So you do that when you're transparent. I share numbers. I share numbers about collections and profitability and utilization, and what our multiplier is looking like. And, for the most part, I think some of it gets through. I try to talk about it a lot. We have weekly meetings where we have conversations, at more of like a short-term level, like what's going on in the next week or month or so. And then I have a monthly email where I share about where we are with our goals. And then we do at least one, if not two, team meetings where I go kind of deep dive. Because, in our world, especially our public work, collections is a huge problem, right? I mean, you bill an hour, it might be 30-ish days until I get that invoice to the client. It might be another 30-ish days until they get that invoice to an owner, which they might have terms of 30 to 90 days. And then that whole process goes back in line. So it's like that hour that you billed, I might be, 6 months or more until I see that dollar.
Get paid, yeah.
So reminding people about that is, I think, also, important, that, because I mean, just because you're a great engineer does not mean you can make a great business owner. And so it's just, I think that some people forget that, of course, my team want their paychecks. But,
Sure.
sometimes we have to think about like, okay, how long does it take us to get paid for those things? So again, being able to have those conversations and being transparent about those conversations to an engineer right out of school, I think it's helpful for them in their future development, whether it's at Shear or whether it's anywhere else. So they understand the external factors that are affecting the companies that they are at or at Shear. And it might not be us, right? It might be our clients. It might be the industry. And so being transparent is how they understand what we're dealing with when we're trying to create and develop a resilient organization.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that helps provide that sense of ownership, right? So you not only are providing that sense of ownership, but that sense of accountability in, making sure that things are continuing to foster development and growth. So I love that. Not everybody is that way, and most big corporations are not that way, but when you're smaller and more agile, I just love the ability to be transparent because the more people know, the more ownership they take. And then
Yes.
the better quality work you get out of the result because they are truly taking ownership of what it is that they do. So it's kind of a
Oh,
win-win.
they kind of understand why we're making some
Right.
decisions, right?
Right.
They understand the why behind it. And I hear that a lot with students coming out of school. Like they want more purpose in the work that they do. So of
Yeah.
course, our work working directly on projects that impact a community, that itself is purpose work. But also to go another level is like, what's the purpose of Shear? Like, why are we doing these things? Why are we making some of these decisions? We don't want to be just three owners just dictating a decision. It's like, now you have to do this. We want it to be a more of a collaborative thing because, we need their buy-in. Like
Yeah.
they have to be bought in to it as, just as much as we do.
Yeah, definitely. So if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, business advice, when starting out, what do you think that would be based on what you've learned?
With what we're dealing with right now in the industry, which is a massive shortage of talent, would be hire sooner than you need to. So, it has been a struggle for us, the talent pool feels like it's shrinking. And obviously structural engineers are typically pretty conservative. They don't like change. So
Yeah.
trying to convince someone to change and come work for us, can be a challenge. So, we're trying to stay ahead of that curve and, some decisions we could have made earlier on and hiring more quickly. But of course, there's a cost associated with that too.
Yeah. I think industry-wide, I'm hearing that consistently across the board. So, I think the entire industry is pretty much short-staffed, and trying to be able to backfill those positions has been increasingly difficult. And everybody's kind of doing something a little bit different to be able to foster some of those, new graduates. Are you guys doing anything specific at any of your universities to be able to bring in like internships to train them up for, potential full-time employment once they graduate?
Oh, yeah, we have a robust internship program. We offer flexible internships. So we've done like part-time internships. We've done internships during
Nice.
the school year. We've hired more interns than, because again, they also, take some time to develop as well. So we've hired extra interns. It's not necessarily that. I mean, I really think this goes back to the Great Recession and how many people left the industry or never joined the industry. And so it's that, 10, 15 year person that doesn't exist. And so we're all, trying to find the people that they went back to school, they became lawyers, teachers, they never started.
Yeah.
So what we're focusing on is even sooner than that. We do a lot of work at the middle school level. That
Wow.
seems to be like the sweet spot of engagement because we really want to encourage young women and people of color to consider our industry as a whole, of course, structural engineering, but even just our industry as a whole, because we just need more people, which means we need a more diverse workforce. And so we do a lot of things like introduce a girl
Wow.
to engineering day, where we go on a Saturday, bring hundreds of girls age 8 to 14. They do hands-on engineering activities, super fun. Their parents come. They can ask questions about the career and about jobs and internships and school, universities they should be considering. Because really, like by the
Yeah.
time they're later in high school, they kind of think they already know what they want to do. And picking a school, especially an engineering school, like they have to kind of be prepared for that. And so we really need to get them even before. So we do quite a bit of conversation because I do think, kids love to build with Legos. My son loves to build with Legos and create
Yeah.
somewhere that's being lost,
Yeah.
like it's being lost. It's like, oh, that's not a career path for me. And so we really want to encourage kids to stick with it and to take those classes, look at those universities that offer engineering, know that women make amazing, incredible engineers. So that's where our focus is even before college.
That's amazing. And you're actually the first firm that I've spoken to that's really going down to that youngest level, but it makes total sense. It makes total sense. So I love that you are really kind of pushing that envelope of, integration. And I bet you are going to see in the long term a really great return on that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, let's hope, right?
Yeah.
Are there any projects that you guys are working on right now that are just standout projects? Or has there been a recent project that you guys have worked on that has really helped define your brand and what it is you guys stand for? Is there one particular, or is it just kind of everything that you do in general?
There's a really cool project that we just did a ribbon cutting for on Saturday, so that's why it's top of mind.
Cool.
But it's called the Pathway of Progress. It's at Georgia Tech. It is actually an art installation that this amazing female artist and architect created to honor women voices who graduated or supported Georgia Tech. And so it's like 161 beautiful hexagon mirror tiles that are over a walkway, because it's a pathway.
Yeah.
And they have these stories of women on mirror tiles, and so they reflect back into the student body of all like the amazing accomplishments. And it's just like, it just checks a lot of boxes. It's beautiful. It's so cool. A lot of incredible women worked on the job. My business partner and another female engineer did the engineering. It has like all this, it's held up by these massive poles that have like 1,000 pounds of pressure that go into the ground. So it's just, there's a lot of like symbolic energy it was like a labor of love and passion and heart that went into this amazing project celebrating female engineering. And so it's really lovely.
Oh, I love that. We'll have to pull some pictures and I'll put that
Yes.
on the recording so people can see what you designed. That's so cool. Did you guys design it as architects and then
We just did the engineering
you
for
just did the
the
engineering part?
structure. So it's this big web of 3,000 tiles, and they'll keep etching them as they go. But it's I think one of the poles has like 32 helical piers under it, which is a lot. So there's like a lot of, it's holding up a lot of weight and pressure and tension.
That's crazy. The detail, I bet, is probably pretty phenomenal. That's really cool. So, what parting words from Shear Structural? What do you want to leave our listening audience with to really remember what Shear Structural stands for in the industry?
I would love to leave people with a reminder that we really can make a positive difference in someone's life. And it might not be someone that you ever meet, but thinking about how our designs and our buildings and our structures and our places and our spaces really do touch so many different people's lives, and they can be an inspiration and they can be a frustration, they can be lots of different things to lots of people, but we really should be celebrating the work that we do each and every day, because the work that we do is so cool, so important, and, have you thanked an engineer today? Because really, I mean, that's, we would not exist without the problem solving of engineers. And I just think sometimes like we don't often think about our industry. We don't often give
Mm-mm.
ourselves enough credit. And I would love to see more people really singing that song of the wonderful work that we all do.
I love that. That's a great ending story. So, what's your website address?
It is Shear, SHEAR, structural.com. And if you notice the first three letters, SHE.
E.
So we have a little accent in our logo. We have a little accent on the E. So just this little subliminal, but yes,
Very
shearstructural.com.
creative.
We're
Yeah.
also on Facebook and Instagram at Shear Structural or on LinkedIn. So yeah, come check us out.
How can people connect with you? Are you on LinkedIn?
Yes, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook.
All right. Malory Atkinson of Shear Structural, thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future. And it's been really a pleasure talking to you because you are a change maker in this industry. And I love to see how you guys are progressing forward, especially for women in the industry. So bravo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Jen.
Yeah, no problem.